Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Hogue Deka. And this is the Warncliffe blade specifically with a blue set of, what was their term for this? G10 mascus, a G mascus, something like that. But anyways, with a very interesting set of scales on it there. So let's first off start off by thanking my Patreon patrons. Not only do they make it possible for me to pick up random pieces of gear just for fun for the channel, but they also make it, well, frankly, they make my life a whole lot nicer, right? I'm a big fan of my patrons, so thank you for that. Next thing, let's do some size comparison real quick. Here it is against the Hogue Deka. So what we see here is that although it's got a reasonably sized blade here in terms of sharpened length, we're not so far off the entire blade length of Delica here. Here we have the Hogue PM2, and again, in sharpened length, they're very similar, even though the handle is much smaller. And then here we have the Ontario Rat number 2, and actually, I'll throw one other non-conventional piece in here. This is the Doug Ritter RSK Mark 1 G2 Mini, which is a very nice knife and also made by Hogue. And then actually, finally, I'll throw up a ruler here for size comparison because this guy is coming in slightly over 3 inches. So you're going to want to keep that one in mind depending on your local legal laws. Legal laws, that's as opposed to illegal... we're not going to get into illegal laws here. So, moving on. First off, what the heck's a Hogue? Well, Hogue is a company that was originally best known for, I believe, firearms accessories, but they have since pushed into knives in actually a very reasonable way. They've been doing some really nice work. And this is a design by Alan Leischwitz, who is a well-known custom knife designer, as well as their, I gather, their main in-house designer, although they're using other designers now, which is a great thing too. But anyway, so this is one of his designs, and so there you go. And then finally, a quick note. This is using the Hogue Able lock. Now, I know what you're thinking, Nick, that looks a lot like the Benchmade X's lock. Well, in fact, it does, but that went out of patent sometime back here, so a lot of companies have started using it, and this is Hogue's variant, the Able lock. And it works quite well, but same basic operating principle, so there you go. And so let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this interesting little knife right here. So on the good side, start with it's made in the States, right? Quality, of course, is about effort rather than geography, but for a lot of people, that matters right now. And so having it being made in the USA is definitely a nice thing for a lot of folks. I mean, cheering for the home team, right? No harm in that. So there you go. Next thing, fully ambidextrous. That's just, that's 2 words, but it is, in fact, a benefit to this knife. Because this has ambidextrous thumb studs on both sides there, it has a clip that can be swapped to the other side there, and it has the Able lock bar is able to be accessed from both sides. This is a knife that is not only fully usable by lefties, but you get exactly the same experience as a lefty and versus as a righty. And this is sort of a relative rarity in the knife world these days still. The majority of people, a majority of knives are not made for that 10% of the population, and so it's nice to see something that is 100% lefty friendly. That's a great thing. Next thing, this does have a lot of grip to it. What I mean by that is that with this in the hand, you're not going anywhere with it. This is a good Vaseline factory knife. You can see they've put in a fair amount of aggressive milling, and it's a little bit disguised by the G mascus here, but it's definitely in there, and that prevents you from sliding around too much, along with the finger grooves and things like that. That is a beautiful thing. Great. Next thing, the action on this guy is very nice. As you're seeing here, absolutely cleanly deploys, absolutely cleanly closes. There is no assist or anything like that. It's a purely manual knife, but it has a very, very nice action. And so I definitely appreciate that, and it's definitely got that addictive flicker to do it in the same way that a lot of your sliding bar style locks do. Next thing, this guy is relatively lightweight. We are coming in here at 2.5 ounces, 2.6, I suppose, rounding properly, for a little over 3 inches of blade, so it's a pretty lightweight piece, which is something I appreciate very much. Then finally, on the good side, the price on this is actually quite good. This is $120 for an American-made folder in CPM 20 CV steel with what we'll see is a very nice blade here, and good overall functioning. You know what? That's pretty solid. I am perfectly okay with that. And so, to me at least, that's what's good here, is that the price is quite nice. It's lightweight with a very nice action, lots of gription to it. It is a fully ambidextrous knife, and it is made here in the US of the A. The great side to me is the blade, 100%. Now, look, I'm aware that the compound grind is not going to be for everybody, and in fact, historically, compound grinds haven't really been for me. They tend to be something that is more for their aesthetics than function. But actually, in this case, and by the way, by compound grind, I mean that you've got a higher grind over here, leading to a thinner edge, relative to a lower grind over here, leading to a slightly thicker edge. However, the operative word here is slightly. This is a knife that is very, very thin behind the edge, up at the tip there, and is reasonably thin behind the edge down at the bottom there. That means that you do have a chunk of more durable edge that you can use if you're really trying to crunch on, push on something to cut. But at the same time, you also have this very thin, slicey outer area for fine work. This is a compound grind that goes from really well ground to pretty well ground. And given I have a bias towards sliceier knives, and that results in somewhat less durable edges, but this gives you sort of a best of both worlds thing. Do I want this on every knife? No, but I think this is one of my very favorite compound grinds I've handled, because it gives you two good options rather than one that is ridiculously, like one is a lumber splitting wedge and the other one is still thick behind the edge. This is pretty good there. But in addition to being well ground with a nice thin edge and actually very thin blade stock as well, which is worth highlighting, it is a CPM 20 CV, which is one of the better blade steels out there these days. It has a very nice swedge on the top of it here, giving it a little bit more aesthetic intrigue. And frankly, it just cuts great. This is and plus a good sharpening choil down at the bottom here. This is a cutting machine. This does a great job of just tearing through, well, damn near anything. So I appreciate very much the blade on this. That is by far the best part of this, is that blade. It just works exceptionally well. So to me, that's the great, is that this blade is it's really, really good. On the bad side, there is definitely some controversy in the design. I showed this to my wife, and she just kind of looked at me like, wait, what? I don't understand any part of that, but the handle, the hardware, the compound grind, and honestly, there are definitely going to be some people for whom a number of parts of this are going to be off-putting. I mean, if nothing else, like the G-Mascus here, it looks like you took a peacock and you just put it into like a compressor of some variety and smushed it down and made a peacock micarta. That's kind of what you end up with looking at this. Is it terribly unattractive? No, and from a distance, it ends up just kind of looking blue-blackish. But it definitely has an aesthetic and a style that I think might be a little controversial. It certainly was in my household. We'll put it that way. Next thing, do you think you could have any more screws on this? I mean, seriously, on one side alone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different screws, and then flip it over for even more. They've got this thing's got more hardware than my Home Depot does. It's insane. I get it. At some level, each one of these makes sense, right? Because these 2 screws are holding in the liner, combined with the pivot here. These 3 screws in the back are holding in the back spaces, but good God, guys, and then 2 screws for the clip, which I don't know why they needed 2 if they've got this locating groove down in there. But whatever, I'm not going to second guess, but that's a lot of hardware, guys. Seriously. I mean, it's great if we have an apocalypse where all the Swiss lathes die and we have to rebuild using the screws at hand. This is going to keep you steady, but it kind of takes away a little bit from the aesthetics of the piece, right? And so there's a lot of hardware on this guy. Next thing, speaking of the mounting plate here, I'm not necessarily a big fan of having that in there. Now, what this is for is to fill the gap that's left behind when you remove the clip on the other side there. And that's fine, but the problem is the clip is actually still sticking up a little bit out of the handle there. And although it's nice to have that clip kind of situated in a groove, which keeps it from moving around, from doing kind of a on the top of the knife, I kind of prefer it when you do something a little closer to this, where you just have a set of holes in there. And then that way you don't have this extra piece of something kind of clogging up the other side. If there were just 2 holes there, it would cut down a little bit on the, you put the entire hardware store in the knife sort of approach. And so especially when the clip isn't all that flush, it seems a little bit weird. And actually, speaking of that clip is fine, but the ergos on it aren't necessarily super amazing. It kind of digs into your hand a little bit, and that's not something I particularly appreciate. And frankly, the ergos on this generally are not the most amazing thing. They're okay. They work, and it's not, I've definitely had some ergonomic train wrecks, but my biggest feeling is that you're actually a little bit far away from the cutting edge as you're using it, and more importantly, your fingers are kind of way out in front of it. So it's not the end of the world, but it definitely, ergonomically speaking, isn't super amazing for me. A little bit more hot spotting than some. So there's that. And then finally, as you're probably hearing, there is definitely a little bit of lock stick on this guy. And there has been, I've done some clean outs, I've removed the oil, I've added the oil. It's got some lock stick to it. Not the end of the world, and, there's some, positive retention, sure, whatever. But it's definitely a little lock sticky. So, to me, at least, that's what's bad here, is that there is some lock stick. The clip ergos are not amazing. The mounting plate just doesn't do it for me. The hardware thing, yeah, that's a thing. And then the design itself is going to be a little controversial. On the ugly front, I don't really see anything particularly ugly here from a design perspective, so I think we're going on to the conclusions. And that's that this is a fine little knife, right? It's got US-made construction, fully ambidextrous. It's got a good grip, good action, nice lightweight, a good price, and a blade that is actually really, really nice for cutting. It's a bit of an odd design. It's got a little bit more screwing going on here than a cheap Motel. It's got a mounting plate that's drawing a lot of attention to the what is effectively a bug, having all of that extra hardware on there. The clip isn't awesome in the hand, and there is some lock stick in there. In practice, I think this is going to be a knife where you already kind of know the answer. You're either liking the look, you're liking the blade, you're liking the price, and you're ready to make a deal, or you've already moved on to something else. And honestly, there were a lot of good something elses out there, even from Hogue. The Ritter RSK Mark 1 G2 MIDI, good lord, is another really nice choice, and it's a very similar lock. It's a very similar size. It's a similar slicey, thin blade. I think a lot of people might find, if you don't find this one compelling, you might find this one compelling, and vice versa. Some people might not want something a little bit more vanilla and want to go a little crazier, etc. Either way, these are both really solid knives. And actually, one thing I didn't mention in the review, but it does bring me some joy, is that Hogue has actually recently changed their warranty to allow disassembly with absolutely no question. This is not something that's itself super relevant, but it does show a company that gives a damn what their customers are thinking about and really wants to be there and do right by them. So Hogue is definitely a company I got a mind to support. But anyways, I think this is definitely an interesting piece, and it's going to be a knife that's going to be very solid, and I think for a lot of people, especially if you do love that design, it could easily be a gem. If you're liking what it's offering, that is, and you're liking the overall look of it, and you want something that's doing this, well, honestly, I see no good reason not to have one of these guys on Deka. Okay, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you. Maybe they'll make it for a long time. They can have a Decade edition. No? Okay. Anyways, have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. I shouldn't hate on the scales. It's just decoration. Okay. Bye now.